Hello, everyone. So we just about to start our new webinar in regards to data security. We just have a few seconds to wait for the others to join before we start. So and yeah, as I said, the topic for today's webinar will be a bit more complicated. It will fluctuate around cybersecurity, and in a broader term, it will be just around data security, because it covers not only cyber things, but there are some other topics, and the complexity of it will be that cybersecurity by itself it's quite a sophisticated thing. So I will try to explain this as easy and understandable as possible. But yeah, for sure, please feel free to raise your questions, so we can discuss that if you won't be grasping some things. So I'd like to start. So as I said, the topic for today will be cybersecurity and data protection as a more general thing. So, what's cybersecurity? It's actually the collection of different measures to prevent the thing which is called cyber attack. Okay, so before we start discussing the topic by itself, it's really important to understand what cyber attack is not about, because I knew that there's quite broad understanding there of cybersecurity in general as a topic there, and this comes from from different movies, for instance, where the evil hackers with dim light trying to hack the Pentagon, for instance. But it's not that so nowadays. Most common practice is a bit different. So first of all, it's the cybersecurity and cyber attacks are not about that some evil hackers will try to watch one in wearing his underwear. Yeah, they can be situations where this will be quite legit things, and at the very end, I will provide a couple of links so you can have a look at those situations. But generally it's not the aim for any evil actors to watch the actual video footage, or another false proposition might be that, okay, so if someone will hack my video system, they can spoof the video streams, like in movies when someone is trying to rob a bank, for instance, they just provide a false video footage, so security guards will be unaware of what's going on. But in 99.99% of the cases, it won't be that so. So there are two most common types of cyber attacks nowadays, especially targeting security systems. So the first one is edge device botnets. So edge devices, I mean cameras in most cases, and ransomware. Yeah, so just to block someone's operations and just try to get some ransom in bitcoins or whatsoever. So, and the actual situation is much worse than it seems from the media, because there are plenty of known backdoors and the actual vulnerabilities, even with the most common systems out there in the market. So, but what's the nowadays common practice in order to make your system secure? So, and this is not the exhaustive list, it's just the most common measures that most of the security managers they believe that will protect them from their system to be hacked. So yeah, so ensure that the system does not respond to ping requests, of course. So hackers will utilize ping, most probably. Yeah, so there's a need to change the IP ports. They are exposed to the internet. Yeah, the port scanning is quite a common thing. Of course, does he need to change all the default passwords in the system? Yeah, that's quite legit. So, and the proper configured firewall, yeah. So nowadays it's the kind of necessity, and definitely one has to ensure that the firmware and the software and the system is up to date. So there's no legacy backdoors are there. So this is all true and legit, but unfortunately, it's just the cyber hygiene. So it's not yet security. So all those measures are just like washing your hands, but they're not yet security. And what are the most common consequences if someone can apply just those measures and think that is secure? First of all, as I said, the most common thing that the edge devices or ARM or system-on-chip cameras can be turned into the botnet, and I think this is kind of 80% of cyber attack nowadays. But the consequence will be those cameras, even being infected, they will continue to behave as usual. They will stream video and they will have all their transport layer security certificates in place. So from their common perspective, they will behave as usual, nothing changed. But they can start distributed denial of service attack at a certain time point where actually the external actor will decide that it's time to start this one. More importantly, they can spam intranet of the organizations with phishing emails. Yeah, so of course. So they are the cameras by themselves. They are not the main goal. They are just a tool that bad actors can utilize to infiltrate into their organization. So, and they can spam intranet with phishing emails. So there's been like a couple of years ago, there's been huge case where the intranet of some retail chain been just flooded with phishing emails coming from the cameras. The cameras by itself, they can spoof their index web page, especially if it will require some legacy ActiveX plugins or any other sort of plugins, because a plugin is just a piece of code that can be executed on the remote machine. So if you connect to this camera and the camera spoofs its web page, so you literally execute an external code, and this code might be anything, ransomware or whatever. They've been even more sophisticated ransomware-related attacks recently, like ransomware infected screenshots. Yeah, because a screenshot is a file, an image file like JPEG or so, and it by itself can be infected. Yeah, so, and this can be distributed, and for internal people inside the organization. Okay, so they got the message from the security system, and with the screenshot attached, definitely they would like to have a look. Okay, what's going on with my security system? And okay, fine, click, infected, profit. The other thing, most of those devices that's surprise Linux based. So there's wide misbelief that Linux is kind of more secure than Windows. No, the unfortunate truth is no system is secure. So Linux has its own vulnerabilities and Windows has its own. But any botnets that are targeting any of those edge devices, they are being designed to run on Linux. And large arrays of devices are most likely to be targeted. And okay, where you can have the large array of the edge devices, yeah, so the large sites with plenty of cameras out there. So hundreds of cameras means hundreds of potentially infectable devices. And personal data breaches can be costly. So this is just a consequence. Will it be cost on the operation stop or ransomware or any other consequences, or just exposure of the personal data like breaching GDPR. Anyways, all of those consequences can be really costly. But it's not the topic for today's session, so we won't be discussing the costs of this. We'll be discussing more the things. So okay, so what it means, the system is secure as much as possible. So first of all the vendors, us included, of course, we would like to promote and we like to market our top security methods that we have implemented. So say we implemented the gazillion bits security keys that can be hacked even with the quantum computers. This is like the top security method, and this is fine unless it doesn't really matter. Because if a system can be reached and exposed through a less security communication method, the top security, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, so we've got our gate locked, and closed, but there's no fence around. Okay, so what's the point? Okay, now get back to the topic. So data security. So first of all, everything evolves, and including the cyber threats out there. So new vulnerabilities, new issues, new bugs, new backdoors being disclosed daily basis, and the older technologies simply can't keep up. We will have a look at the evolution of different security technologies just in a few seconds. And the other unfortunate truth is just a casual collection of loose measures. Just okay, so something here, something there, and we're safe and sound. No, this cannot provide an adequate cyber resistance. And this is why there's a need for absolutely consistent and full framework, including multiple defense layers, because each layer can protect you from just from a bench of various cyber attacks, but not from all of them. So, and we have to make sure there's an absolutely full collection of those cybersecurity layers in order to make sure that our system will be cyber secure just by design, not because we are trying to put as much of the effort on top of it as possible. So, in Luxriot, how do we see the proper data security layers, the layered defense? It all starts with the obvious thing, which include training and awareness. Awareness means people have to understand what actually the cybersecurity means, what it involves, and they have to understand what's the risk-based approach, what's the insider threat, how to implement zero trust policy if this site belongs to the critical infrastructure. So I have to admit that zero trust policy is a really frustrating thing for like everyday operation, but ultimately it can be implemented. So I wouldn't say this is really necessary for an average commercial enterprise, but it's highly possible, and we know some of the military end users, they do employ zero trust policy. And the actual cybersecurity in terms of the system by itself, it starts with encryption. So it includes end-to-end data encryption. So it means data or data, doesn't really matter, data in transit, so on move, so when you transmit everything. So data at rest, when you store anything, and which is oftentimes forgotten, the API and SDK calls. So because, so you got a proper security for data transit, you store it securely, but the API allows an unauthorized access to this data. So it's just a matter of time when the system will be breached. Then the other thing, which is less technical, it's called logical security. It employs everything related to the authorization, authentication, user management, and all the things. but also includes the proper security measures around physical and logical layer and those layers separation. We will have a look what that means. Definitely the layer of logging, monitoring, and alerting. So yeah, so one has to be aware that something goes wrong or something goes right with the system. So it simply means track, log, and audit everything. And then the other layer of data security, it's less related to cybersecurity by itself. It's more about the system resilience. And this layer is dedicated to ensure the system robustness. So system will be up and running no matter what. And this also includes the so-called air gapping. So air gap in brackets. So it's not like a physical air gap. It's just an air gap between the physical layer of edge devices, say cameras, and the external world like internet and other things. And definitely data integrity. So, okay, you're safe and sound on securing your data, but data should be kept in proper manner so it won't be damaged. So, and everything around the things like failover, replication, and all the things, but it won't be the topic for today's discussion. So today we will stop on the top 3 layers, like training and awareness, encryption, and we will have a look at logical security because it's the most confusing one. So people simply don't know anything about this one. So everyone understands. So all the users have to be provided with proper access, authentication. But what means the real logical security? Well, remains hidden. So we will have a look at this. And I will start with the layer number 1, the encryption, or the things which include data, securing data in transit, data at rest, and their APIs and SDKs. And I will start with data on move security. So data on move means where the data is transmitted from camera to server, from server to anywhere. So it moves. And the evolution of the different measures to secure data in transit, it starts with the basic authentication. So some 15 years ago, that was probably the only method which existed. And it's quite surprising that it continues to exist even nowadays. But let's have a look what it means. So the basic authentication. So it means there's no transport layer security. Transport means the communication channel as it is. So all the messages within these communication channels are visible. The data itself is not secured. It's unencrypted, so it comes as it is. And there's no password security. So the passwords been just passed by unencrypted, and the password is sent with each message. So each packet coming from one point to another, it also contains all the authentication things like passwords. And those passwords, no, they're definitely hashed, but hash doesn't mean the encryption, so it can be unhashed easily. So the basic authentication, it means there's no security in place and the attack will be absolutely no complex. So it's just plain text and here you go. Definitely it's evolved into something more sophisticated and become the kind of by default standard. Okay, we have to wrap our transport layer or the communication channel by itself in the transport layer security. This is mostly known as HTTPS. So encrypted transmission channel, but the data inside is unencrypted, that there's no password security, but the channel itself is encrypted. Definitely that limits attack surface. However, it's still open to the middleware It's open for the forged certificates attack because the transport layer security includes certificates, and those certificates can be forged. It also includes the API vulnerabilities. So because API can deal with the issuing of those security certificates, so some more sophisticated evil actors, they can make a proper application based on the API and just avoid the complexity of breaking into the transport layer security. And this one is definitely vulnerable to denial of service attack. Just because of its nature. However, it brings the attack complexity into the moderate level, so it's not that easy breakable. There's another alternative to the transport layer security. It's called digest authentication. I wouldn't say it's better or worse. So they both approaches have these pros and cons, but digest means that there's no transport layer security, so the channel is transparent. However, the data inside this channel, it comes in within the capsule, so it's secured, it's encrypted. And more importantly, it provides also the password security within the channel. So yeah, the channel is transparent, but all the passwords, first of all, they are encrypted, and then those passwords sent just once when the session starts. And with each second message, the session token is used instead of the password. So even if one just managed to break up inside this channel, which is not that difficult, the result will be the possession of the session token, which is much less threat compared to the password, because session token is time limited, capabilities limited, and just dedicated to one particular session. So it will be devaluated very soon. So it does not provide any surface for any kind of attack. So that means the attack surface can be definitely limited. Still, the system can be vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attack. It is vulnerable to insider threats in the form of the leakage of the hashes. So the hashes is the thing which is used for like encrypting the passwords. So if one will have suddenly will have the possession of this hash, that he can decrypt the password. And it's also sensitive to the server protection policies. Because so if the data by itself is secured, encrypted, but someone can get an access to the server and get an access to these hashes, okay, so that means that the system is broken. So still, it provides the moderate attack complexity, so it's definitely much more complex than just breaking basic authentication. And the very logical step is to wrap the transport layer security around the digest. That provides us, first of all, the channel by itself. It's secured, it's encrypted. Even data inside the channel is encrypted, password been encrypted and sent just once, and then session tokens will be utilized. So it provides just a very layered defense. So the attack surface will be very limited, because there's kind of complex of different things involved into the securing the data, and the attack by itself will become very complex. I wouldn't say it's unbreakable, so everything is breakable, but it will be a very, very complex task. And let's have a look at the proper arrangement around data and move security. So what kind of things shall it include? So first of all, data by itself, it has to be encrypted perfectly with if it encrypted with 256-bit encryption, RSA. And even this encrypted data can be included into the hash digested capsule. So we wrap this, even already encrypted data inside the hash digested capsule by itself, and we pass this data through the secure tunnel, so which provides the end-to-end encryption now and can utilize self-signed or custom certificates if someone cares about the like having more bits or megabytes on the certificate encryption. And then definitely important that the system should not transmit the password with every single message, and their session tokens have to be utilized instead. So if even the certain hacker will manage to break this stuff, the only thing that he will get is just a piece of data and the session token, which is not of high value by itself. Just to summarize, just a checklist. What means the proper data on move security? So first of all, it has to be transport layer security in place. Doesn't really matter. It's based on self-signed certificates or custom security certificates. Better to have both. But the transport layer security, TLS or HTTPS, if you like, it has to be in place. Then the data inside this already secure channel, it has to be encrypted, and it has to be also hashed into messages. There should be password encryption. So the passwords by themselves, they have to be hashed, and the password has to be transferred just once, and the session tokens have to be used. So those definitely have to be time limited. This is quite a complex setup, and I totally understand some of the industry, even leading industry brands that do not employ this in full because this is quite complex. And the other thing that it also breaks the existing integrations. For instance, if the integration has been based on the API, which did not include all of those security measures in place, so if a vendor will try to enforce all of them, then the integration won't work. So this is kind of legacy stuff. But okay, so data have been transferred securely. Now we come to securing data at rest. So where the data is stored, it also has to be stored securely. Let's have a look how it works. So again, the evolution or the practices which are around on the market, even nowadays, no data security at all, totally none. You can still find systems with this kind of approach. So first of all, there's no data encryption, so anyone can have an access to the database. Okay, so you can just simply pull out your hard drive and okay, here you go, you're in possession of database. It's not anyhow encrypted. And even this unencrypted database, it contains all the video footage in open format, open source format, or not that open source like AVI or MKV. So anyone can literally see the recordings without without breaking the switch. And there's no storage protection, so anyone can have an access to the storage by itself. So the hard drives are not encrypted anyhow. So simply just get out the hard drives, plug in, run your VLC player, and here you go. You can see everything. That means that the attack surface, there's no security in place at all. So that attack by itself, it's not complex anyhow. Improper data at rest security. This is more common, and you can easily find plenty of examples of this type of approach on the market, mostly on the low-end segment, definitely. But there's no data encryption, so anyone can access the database. There's no storage protection, so anyone can access the storage. The only difference is that the video is stored in the perpetual video format. So accessing this video will require some special tools, but those tools are not that hard to get actually. So still, this absolutely open attack surface, there's no security in place at all. The only complexity, relative complexity is to get the special video tools to decode the video, but it's not that complex at all. The minimum data at rest security, and this is actually the vast majority of the systems on the market. This is what they employ. Say, I just have to say this is the bare minimum. What can be found acceptable. There's no storage protection, so that means that anyone can technically access the storage by itself, but yeah, so the data on that storage is encrypted. So there's a layer of encryption for the databases. The video is stored in some dedicated video format, and the attack surface is kind of limited. Unfortunately, it's still open for the insider threat resistance because there's no storage protection. So it means that even in the encrypted databases can be copied externally, and then yeah, so you have plenty of time to utilize modern GPUs, which can just simply brute force this type of encryption, because there's no protection out from brute forcing on those databases, unfortunately. Yeah, it will take time, but who cares? Even if it will take a couple of days. So don't believe anyone saying, yeah, so it will take months, years, hundreds years, thousands years. Yeah, if you will do this based on the CPU, of course, it might take years. But don't forget about the modern GPUs, which can do like several billions brute force attacks per second. It won't take years. It will take minutes, hours, maybe a couple of days, but nothing more. So, and there's a proper layered data threat security, of course. Yeah. So first of all, data has to be encrypted by itself. The proper dedicated video format, so not like an open source with all its vulnerabilities openly disclosed. So it has to be there. The storage by itself has to have the separate layer of encryption, so it cannot be accessible even by insiders. So that means that the attack surface will be very limited. So there are proper security layers to address both external and internal threats and breaches. And the attack complexity will become very complex. So again, I will say that everything can be broken, but it will be a very complex task. Just to summarize, for data at rest security, so what shall be there? So it's quite easy. So first of all, database encryption, and not just archive databases, because those are of less value. Actually, the system database databases have to be encrypted, because sometime in few instances, I ran out around the systems which contain their system configuration databases in unencrypted format. Storage protection, definitely. So the access to the storage has to be restricted with an extra layer of encryption, and this layer of encryption has to have the user-defined passwords. So they should not be like vendor-defined super admin. Yeah, so this comes handy in case if you just forgot your password, but if one knows how to shut down this layer of protection, that means everyone knows this. And definitely the secure video format, so no open source or generic formats, because as we just recently saw, the Log4j vulnerability within some of the logging stuff, but it means that any kind of open source can contain those breaches or backdoors, and those will be widely disclosed. So that means that there will be a way to hack this, and everyone will know how to do this. Now, let's have a look at the nowadays common data security framework. So how it looks like in, unfortunately, I have to say 90% of the cases. So there's a proper transport layer security around basic authentication. As I mentioned before, this is not because the vendors would like to keep this. Now they cannot just get rid of this because of the legacy things that and employing the proper transport layer security around digesting this first of all by itself it's quite complex task, and then it will ruin all the existing integrations and APIs which those vendors would like to avoid. The other thing which still there, the legacy stuff, the static stream URLs for API. So we all know that RTSP is there. It's widely used. Unfortunately, this is a legacy thing. So it's just as it is. So it works on the static URL. Unfortunately, it's not the best practice. Even if it's there and it's the most common one, it provides the attack surface through the APIs. Then the point-to-point encryption. So this is also another common thing that, yeah, so everyone will say we employ the end-to-end encryption. Okay, but HTTPS or TLS is not point-to-point. It's not end-to-end, sorry, it's point-to-point. So every intermediate device within your connection, it just received encrypted message and encrypts it again using probably the same level of encryption. But okay, so what if this device has been breached and it will not wrap the transmission channel into the proper transport layer security? This is probably the most significant disadvantage of the HTTPS by itself. So all the intermediate devices have to be trusted. Unfortunately, this is not the case when something is exposed to the internet. I don't have to say the HTTPS is bad. No, it's good. It's very good. Unfortunately, it has some limitations as well. So it should not be utilized as the only security layer out there. And the other quite common task is limited, if any, at all, data at rest protection. So this is oftentimes forgotten, and there are systems which quite common system and quite popular, which continues to store the video recordings and not only are they open formats, but without any kind of data at rest encryption at all. So yeah, so this is a common thing. Or the databases are just hashed, but they are not properly encrypted. So hashing databases doesn't mean that it's that bad as an open database, but it's very vulnerable to the insider threat because, okay, if the storage is accessible by someone inside the organization, that means that the hashes can be copied and transferred outside, so there will be no issue for any sort of hacker or malware to decrypt those databases. This is the unfortunate truth, and the thing is, again, I will repeat the bottom. What's the bottom line? Even if a server, a camera, edge device, whatever, any sort of security device within the system, it supports a certain level of secure communication. Say it does have the proper TLS with the proper security keys management whatsoever. So everything's secure and sound. It doesn't mean the system can't be reached through the less secure communication method. So yeah, so backdoors, authorized personnel only, and especially the insider threat, which is kind of oftentimes forgotten, but unfortunately, say 70 to 80% of the security breaches within the organizations being caused by the insiders. Most likely unwillingly, just by phishing emails or by infected hardware, but still. So insider threat is there. But let's get back to the data security encryption, just to explain what do we have in EVA. We do employ the proper database encryption by default. Plus we provide an extra user password layer for the storage. And just keep in mind that we have no control over this security layer. So if you forgot the password, so you don't. We provide a end-to-end data encryption for all the data flow. So it means server to server, server to client, camera to server. We employ we support both the self-signed or your own custom certificates or the certificates issued by the certain authority. And we employ the encrypted session tokens. So we provide a very limited exposure to the passwords. And we also utilize, this also provides us with the denial of service attack prevention. So just because of its nature, the system cannot be utilized for denial of service attacks. It doesn't mean that like edge devices cannot do this, but at least we are trying to keep our system out of this. So we have certain measures to prevent this. We have the strict no basic authentication policy for all the APIs, SDKs, and so on. So it won't work. And just because of its nature. So as I said, if someone provides the basic authentication, even wrapped into the proper transport layer security, it means it's point-to-point. It's not end-to-end encryption. Definitely, we utilize the proper our own format for video storage, but not only because of the like security things, but it also provides the much faster archiving. And we also employ the multi-database architecture. So we got separate databases for different things, different types of data. And this also provides an extra layer against data corruption. So if someone will try to break the data, okay, so it is distributed and it won't be affected all in one. Now get back to the other security layers. I've been talking about the insider threat. So let's have a look at what's this. And the most efficient measure actually to provide the resistance towards the insider threat is so-called logical security. But let's have a look what insider threat is and how we can actually fight this one. So first of all, the regular users can be as dangerous as the privileged ones. And we will see why. And in our case, we provide some comprehensive measures in order to prevent this insider threat and also employ dedicated framework to separate logical and physical layers. And just to be resistant for the insider threat or just ordinary human error, say full resistance. But let's have a look. Here's our small system with all the hardware, cameras, operators, and operators deal usually with video footage and have their own operator tool for whatever video search or whatsoever. It's not really important nowadays. And there's also the physical layer, which is operated by administrator, and it includes all their users, configurations, databases, cameras, and devices by themselves as the physical devices, all the storage, all the necessary things, all the system configuration. Okay, the most common scenario, unfortunately, is that those layers have the thin separator. So it's kind of semi-transparent. So the operators probably cannot change anything within the user configuration, but they still have an option to see those, and vice versa. The administrators still have an access to the video footage and the operator tools just because of the nature of the system. But anyway, so it works fine till someone from the outside will have an intention to breach the system. Of course, our system has all the cybersecurity and all the other protective measures against those outsiders. So the attack, direct attack towards the system, no, it won't work. However, why to attack this directly? Because there's social engineering, there's a phishing, there's a malware, there's an infiltration, which is much easier than the trying to just brute force the system. And those means that any of the operators intentionally or most likely unintentionally can act as an attacker. What that means? So first of all, and quite straightforward, brute force attack towards the physical layer. And because of the nature of the system, there's no separation between the logical and physical layer. This attack can be potentially successful, but it's unlikely that it will be the case. Most likely, an operator or an insider, again intentionally or most likely unintentionally, can get to the physical layer in order to extract information. Again, if there's no separation, information will be available for the operator in regards to the physical layer of things. What he will do with this information? Okay, so because this is an insider, he can provide this data to the outsider, and then outsider can perform an informed attack, which is much more efficient because, he knows the exact state of the physical configuration. And the other thing is that the system administrator can have the exposure towards some sensitive data. I'm not talking about the GDPR, but indeed this is the case, and it's been quite common thing recently that the system administrator, actually, it doesn't mean that it's your own employee who has all the trust. It means, okay, a system integrator's technician who just makes some minor changes within the camera is also a system administrator to a certain degree, and he can be exposed to the sensitive data. So, and all of those things, those in combination, they create the insider threat. So we have always to be suspicious that anyone inside the organization or even outside the organization, but who has an access to the organization, can act as an insider. Most likely unintentionally, but still. Okay, what can we do with this? Let's get back to our system. So the very same configuration, but system has the proper separation between physical and logical layer. So the same thick as the security layer towards the outsiders. So let's have a look again. So direct attack, okay, it doesn't really make sense. So let's go social engineering or phishing, malware, and the other types of the infiltrations. Okay, we're inside the organization. What shall we do? First of all, brute force attack. But again, because we have the same thick security layer between the logical and physical, this attack will be less likely successful. So it's most likely it fall because it will have the same complexity as trying to attack the system from the outside. Okay, let's have a look at what's the configuration. Try to grab some hashes probably. Okay, get some information. No, unfortunately, it won't be. It won't happen because, yeah, so the system has proper security measures in place. So there's no information is accessible to the operator, even if he intentionally wants to get this information. Unfortunately, it's just simply inaccessible. So the informed attack by itself, is less likely to happen. Okay, what about our system administrator? He actually has a free access towards the physical layer, but it can be easily restricted from the accessing the sensitive information which belongs to their logical layer. So yeah, he can change the IP address of the camera, but less likely to have the access for the certain recordings and things like that. So this means that we got the proper insider threat policy in place. But what that means? Within Evo, we got this strictly separated logical layer and physical layer, exactly as I described. So it has the proper configuration. And why it is important. So I believe you understood why it is necessary. And the thing which is not widely understood, the dedicated configuration application. Because without this, they cannot be proper layer separation. So operators can potentially still have an access towards the physical layer and vice versa. So definitely it means that they separate audio databases, separate server security policies. So the information requests from insiders won't be successful. They control priorities for different user and user groups in case that the supervisor can intercept some malicious actions by insider operator, or not even by the operator himself, but his infected computer. Definitely, it also involves the monitoring and management of user session and connection types. Like the one which was missing in the recent Verkada breach. So, long story short, one of the US-based cloud video surveillance platform providers been breached because someone got in access to their admin password, and because they haven't got any sort of user session monitoring and management in place, they went absolutely successfully, and no one even noticed until the hacker just put all the footages and all the findings to the open internet. So, but it involves more things than that. So, like detailed and absolutely advanced permissions for all logical resources for all users, but this is quite obvious. But also the flexible administration permission for physical and probably logical resources. So they can be potentially super admin, but say the outside technician from an external organization, he can be perfectly restricted to the things that he has to manage, but nothing else. This can be separate access to the just recent archive. This is more related to the GDPR and other more complex GDPR ready authentication scenarios. I believe we can talk about this proper user management and user authentication in our next session. And definitely this can be internal and external groups for permission management, their nested groups and whatever, and secure support for Active Directory and lightweight directory. So the organization can utilize whatever they utilize for the enterprise level. But those are less important. So let's have a wrap. Some references in case the ADT technician been like watching, young women, which is exactly the case where administrator, even their like low-level admin has an access towards their improper video footage, and definitely the case with Verkada, which has been highly exposed, just to name a few. Okay, I believe that's pretty much it.